Spider-Man has some pretty iconic powers, be it wall crawling, web slinging, all the actual spider stuff. But there are some actual caveats that come with that sort of thing. And you know what? Those are what we're exploring today, because it ain't all pretty. Let's do it. In at 10, acidic hands. Discovered by Kane Parker after the clones event, a deformity in his hands causes Kane to possess the ability to generate an endothermic energy that upon skin-to-skin contact inflicts severe burn marks on individuals. Yeah, this man can use his hands that stick to walls to also burn people. Usually he would leave his distinctive marks across a person's face, calling it the mark of Cain, although it is believed that he can do so on other parts of the body, which I mean it makes sense given that, you can just grab on with a hand and then boom, you're burned. But interestingly enough, he also utilizes this way in like a non-harmful manner, using it to burn away his like beard hair, which just gives him a better trim, which is just kind of funny. I like the fact that he uses it to burn his hand into people's faces, but then also just gives himself a nice little trim. But while this ability was discovered by Kane, Peter soon after learns that he can do the same thing. And while he hasn't used this ability, he is still able to do it and just chooses not to because it's a horrible thing to do. He can also pull people's skin off using the stickiness of his hands, which I have asked before, like I've proposed that idea before, because I think that he should have threatened to do that to Kingpin instead of filling his lungs with web, but oh well. In at 9, camouflage. Now this is one of the primary abilities used by Miles Morales' Spider-Man, however, you can actually see that in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man he has this ability as well. Not to the same extent, of course, he can't turn invisible, but there's a theory about how this presents itself. Firstly, the fact that Spider-Man talks to MJ, Aunt May, and Harry without them recognizing Peter's voice could be explained by this just being thanks to this camouflage ability. MJ only recognizes that Peter is Spider-Man after he wants to tell her, after she kisses her fiance upside down. Like, he wants her to know, so of course the camouflage would be off then. And Harry only learns his identity after literally taking his mask off. So yeah, this would also explain why the guy on the train in Spider-Man 2 describes the almost 30-year-old Maguire as just a kid barely older than my son. Or in the comics and animated series, we see that Peter eventually mutates into a giant spider. Maybe staying human is this camouflage ability. His power keeps him looking human. To further support this, in the animated series, Peter starts losing his powers shortly before mutating into the spider creature. If one of his powers was keeping him human, then it would make total sense that he mutates after losing them. And Peter actually started losing his powers in Spider-Man 2, so maybe that's a storyline we could have seen later on. In at 8, stingers. The Other represents a potent spider deity that's intricately connected to the web of life and destiny. While the true nature of its purpose remains enigmatic, the entity grants its chosen vessels heightened abilities and the potential for transformation into a spider-like humanoid monster in times of peril or intense anger. The Earth 616 Spider-Man was selected by the Great Weaver to serve as the receptacle for the power of the Other when he assumed the mantle of Spider-Man. However, due to his subconscious resistance, Spider-Man suppressed and denied this spider aspect until a confrontation with the inheritor Morlun, who consumed the essence of totem avatars, prompting a resurgence of his connection to the Other. At one point during the storyline, Peter Parker has created retractable stingers that are concealed beneath his wrists. And so yeah, with these stingers possessed like a razor sharp edge that could be extended when needed, and then they also delivered like a venom that induced temporary paralysis into his target, which is kind of dope. Kane Parker actually is currently the individual who uses this ability because of course it's Kane, but yeah, it's still pretty dope. And it's 7, clairvoyance. When you think about it, spider sense is kind of predicting the future. It doesn't give you visions or show you exactly what will happen like is typically associated with clairvoyance, but instead it's presented just like a really good gut instinct. Like that tingling sensation that accompanies the spider sense can vary in intensity, providing an indication of the threat level, but like a casual encounter with a potential adversary who isn't actively engaging with an individual may trigger a mild alert, which means that you should be cautious. But on the other hand, when you're facing like an imminent and life-threatening danger like a sniper, like the sensation is going to intensify significantly, even possibly becoming painful. And instinctively it compels you into action. And while the spider sense doesn't reveal the specific nature of the threat, it offers you guidance on the direction that you should move in order to evade it, and things like that. Okay, this extraordinary ability warns you of various perils, okay, ranging from projectiles to like lasers and even contaminated food. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a form of clairvoyance. I can't do that. When I do it, it's called autism. In its 6, equilibrium. While yes, having sticky limbs and appendages makes it easy and possible to stick to walls, that's not all that you need to actually be Spider-Man. Like sure, you can stand on a wall, but even with all the strength of your abs, you wouldn't be able to keep you like balanced and standing upright, alright? No one can do that, not even Chuck Norris. Like how else could you not lose your momentum or anything while swinging through New York, okay? He's swinging around buildings, through alleys, even through like the spaces between cabs and their backs, okay? There's no way that this guy could do all of that just inherently, okay? Like yeah, he's got the powers of a spider, but spiders don't swing around the city doing flips. His center of gravity is constantly fixing himself to keep himself balanced while chasing after red psychopathic space aliens and dudes in rhino costumes. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a power. And at 5, super speed. Spider-Man's agility and acrobatics are often associated with his spider sense and spider qualities, but there's another superpower that often goes unnoticed: incredible speed. Okay, while swinging between buildings, Spider-Man can cover 2 miles in a mere 5 seconds. And it's not just like his web slinging that propels him. His speed allows him to also avoid attacks and dodge bullets. Okay, if you can dodge bullets, you're freaking fast. Spider-Man's exceptional speed was showcased extremely well during the Civil War storyline when he attacked Luke Cage's mansion prior to switching sides. He bursted into the mansion, faced off a room filled with SWAT team officers, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye, but he moved so swiftly that he appeared as a blur, taking down multiple opponents without being detected. Okay, this often overlooked power grants Spider-Man an incredible advantage in combat, and explains quite a lot. I mean, he won't be beating Quicksilver or Flash in any races, but dude's still fast as hell. Okay, if you look like a blur, then yeah, you're fast. And at 4, talking to spiders. God, I thank God they don't talk about this one anymore, because spiders. The power to control and summon spiders may initially appear better suited for like a horror comic, but it actually happens to be one of Spider-Man's lesser known abilities. He chooses not to emphasize the terrifying aspect of this power, thank the Lord. Instead, he uses it in more of like a collective strength sense, tapping into the power of many rather than just aiming to haunt his opponents with lifelong nightmares. Thank you, Peter. This skill likely was introduced into the comics because people were like watching Ant-Man a little too much, you know, because he can like control ants, and now even Squirrel Girl can command squirrels. So it just seems like if you have a connection to an animal, you should be able to control them, apparently. So yeah, Spider-Man had that sort of connection established with arachnids. In truth, it feels more aligned with like Venom or Carnage, but I mean, the only reason that Venom has spider powers is because he bonded to Peter in the first place, so I understand why that wouldn't happen. But like, yeah, okay, they're twisted villains who would fully exploit this ability, but thank God Venom doesn't have it. Yeah, interestingly enough though, it's not the mainstream Spider-Man who possesses this ability, but rather Kane Parker, but I'm sure Spider-Man could do it too. If he can do the acid hands and he had the claws, I'm sure he could do this, but thank God he doesn't. Getting close to the end in number 3, regeneration. While webbing is handy for transportation and apprehending criminals and sometimes even just making a mess if you want to, Peter's mind actually lets him use this ability in unconventional and actually kind of genius ways, specifically turning it back on himself. This gave rise to the concept of a web cocoon, an audacious idea that bears resemblance to how Peter immobilizes criminals with webbing until the authorities arrive, because you know, he wraps them up. But the only difference is that when Peter does the web cocoon on himself, he uses it as a tool for hibernation and accelerated healing. Peter has only used this extremely insane skill on one occasion, but it was because he sustained near fatal injuries during a battle. So he encased himself in a cocoon of webbing to induce rapid healing. It's so insanely cool and a tremendously valuable ability for Spider-Man, but it appears to be exclusive to Peter himself and doesn't really extend to others, and again, he hasn't used it again since. The primary reason behind the limitation was, well, I mean, he's in hibernation when this is happening. You can't really produce Spider-Man comics when Peter's not Spider-Man. But also, while he's in there, he sheds the damaged skin and basically regenerates a whole new body, which is gonna make us all wonder the same thing that WandaVision did. Ship of Theseus? Is it the same Peter, or is it a new Peter if he regenerated basically everything? There you go, debate it in the comments. You're welcome. Engagement. But ultimately, in at number 2, radiation resistance. Now, while some spider-related abilities are well known within Spider-Man's world, you know, wall crawling, proportional strength, knowing the formula to make webs, spider sense, one of them is actually lesser known, but in reality makes a lot of sense. Spider-Man has demonstrated a resistance to poisons and harmful chemicals on multiple occasions, and while not a pivotal power, it does serve a purpose. Essentially, if a villain attempts to poison Peter Parker, their efforts would just be in vain. Moreover, if Mary Jane were to betray Peter and attempt to slip something into his coffee, he would remain oblivious. His resistance to basic poisons could potentially be exploited if someone knew this and tried to use it against him, so it's often overlooked. But yeah, it adds another layer of protection for Peter that reflects just the fact that he is in essence just a Spider-Man. And given that his powers were given to him by a radioactive spider, the resistance extends to radiation as well. So yeah, that's right. If Green Goblin ever goes to Chernobyl, Spidey can still stop him. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Mobile. Hell yes, I love how ridiculous this is. Corona Motors, aiming to promote their environmentally friendly car engine, enlisted the services of advertising firm Carter and Lombardo to propose the idea of a Spider-Mobile in Spider-Man comics. Initially dismissing it as foolish, Spider-Man reconsidered when he realized the dire need for money to cover his rent and expenses. So with the assistance of the Human Torch, they successfully constructed the Spider-Mobile in the comics. After a crash course in driving, Spider-Man's first encounter with the vehicle led him to capture one of Hammerhead's henchmen. However, Mysterio ends up getting Spider-Man to dump the car in a river, prompting Corona Motors to demand its return, despite the inability to locate it in the water. Spider-Man faced a modified version of the Spider-Mobile, engineered by the Tinkerer later on, engaging in a fierce battle with it. Spider-Man eventually subdued it and returned the damaged imitation Spider-Mobile to Carter and Lombardo, but yeah, that's a thing that happened in the comics. Yeah, there you go.
Be a bit more on the common knowledge side for some of you guys. In at number 10 is he's incredibly strong. Now this is pretty much a given, but it's not the fact that he's got superhuman strength that's the surprise. It's how far that superhuman strength can take him. When in his Ghost Rider form, Johnny Blaze can press approximately 25 tons, which equates to 50,000 pounds. And in World War Hulk, he's known to lift even more than that, with Doctor Strange commenting that the character is capable of godlike feats, but its human host, in this case Johnny Blaze, prevents it from reaching its infinite power. And at number 9 is conjure a Hell Cycle. While the Hell Cycle is something that's pretty synonymous with the character, did you guys know that Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze can actually conjure one whenever he wants? Initially, Blaze's motorcycle would catch fire whenever he was in his Ghost Rider form, but later on it was revealed that he could just conjure a bike instead. Created from Hellfire, Johnny was able to craft a whole motorcycle from the tip of his finger. And at number 8 is he's immortal. Whoever is the host for the Spirit of Vengeance is immortal, and because of this, doesn't age. The Spirit of Vengeance is a celestial entity, so it itself cannot die, and when in Ghost Rider form, those who are its host are immortal too. But the host can die, as we've seen with host Danny Ketch when he became part of the Midnight Suns, and died once by the hand of Blade, and the other by Zarathos. Forever young, but can still kick the bucket. And at number 7 is Ghost Rider's regenerative abilities. So it should come as no surprise that Ghost Rider has impressive healing and regenerative abilities. Ghost Rider's shown the ability to regenerate from nothing before. Jack-O-Lantern literally annihilated Ghost Rider's skull in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow arc, only for Ghost Rider to immediately grow back, or suck all the pieces back together. Either or, it happened. This adds to the argument that we'll be briefly touching on later with the discussion of some of Ghost Rider's other powers, the potential for matter manipulation, although we've yet to see any of the Ghost Rider hosts show the full extent of what they can manipulate. And at number 6 is control the weather. When Alejandra Jones became Ghost Rider, she had a few different tricks up her sleeve from what we had seen her male predecessors do, one of which was the ability to manipulate the weather. She's been known to create skull-shaped clouds, and pull some very Storm-like shenanigans by summoning lightning to use as a weapon. We've yet to see the full potential of this trick, so who knows what other kinds of weather-related activities the character is capable of. Up next at number 5 is size shift. In Uncanny Avengers Annual number 1 from 2014, it's revealed Ghost Rider has the ability to shift their size. When battling Thor, he increases in his size, and shoots hellfire out of his mouth, giving the Asgardian a run for his money. We've also seen this trick when Alejandro Jones took on Mephisto, and many fans think that whoever is helming the Ghost Rider alias is capable of using hellfire to manipulate matter, which includes other physical transformations we may have yet to see. But hey, they can also conjure a hell cycle out of hellfire. And in number 4 is his sixth sense. While it may be a little hard to conceive the idea that a character can have more than 5 senses, looking at you Mr. 9 Senses Martian Manhunter, Ghost Rider has an additional sense that's quite fitting of his character. He can sense sin. Similar to how a hunting dog can track an animal based off of their scent, Ghost Rider can track people based off of their sins. It's an ethereal enhanced extrasensory perception that lets him feel sin, in which he can see, smell, or simply just feel it. Up next, number 3 is clones. Once upon a time, Danny Ketch decided to wage a war against the spirits of vengeance, and in order to do so, he created Hellfire clones of himself. They would absorb the spirits after their hosts were dead, which made the clones even stronger. The trick does end up backfiring on Danny though, who is unable to fully control the massive amount of power he's unleashed, but it still earns him some pretty massive street cred in the process. In our number 2 spot is Ghost Rider can summon a plague of locusts. Associated with all things hellish and sinful on Earth, it makes perfect sense that Ghost Rider is capable of summoning terrors of biblical proportions, like locusts. We get to experience this fun little ability when Alejandra Jones becomes the next Ghost Rider, after Johnny Blaze decided to give up the curse, and she was chosen specifically by Adam to take up the mantle. The locusts shoot out of her mouth, and as she puts it, she's justice in its most ancient form. How fitting. But locusts, ah. And finally, in at number 1, Ghost Rider can set your eyeballs on fire. You guys have heard the saying, if looks could kill, right? Well, with Ghost Rider, that cliche gets the literal treatment. By making eye contact with someone, Ghost Rider can set their eyes on fire, unleashing a feeling of the torment of a billion extinguished souls and the pain of eternal guilt. This can cause his victims to go blind or potentially spontaneously combust. Yeah, ouch. Otherwise known as his pendant stare, it's been effective on characters like Galactus in the past. And as you can see in this animation, it's pretty terrifying.
Feel the torment of a billion extinguished souls. Experience the pain of eternal guilt.
Peter's mutant ability allows for him to transform his body into a steel-like substance, often referred to as organic steel, giving him superhuman strength, stamina, endurance, ability. That we all know. But did you know that this organic steel is self-sustaining? When in this form, he does not require any food or water or nutrients since his internal organs are replaced with steel. He also doesn't produce waste, which should be a given. Although it's worth noting that he is only self-sustaining in this form for extended periods of time, basically for as long as he can consciously maintain that form. In other words, if he's ever knocked unconscious, he'll revert back to his human form. He also does not need to breathe when in this form, meaning he can travel underwater or be in harsh environments as long as he maintains the form. Moving on to number 9, his body is made of the 3rd strongest metal. While having a body created out of the 3rd strongest metal in the universe doesn't really seem like something to brag about, it is still impressive nonetheless. Colossus's organic steel is 3rd to vibranium and adamantium in terms of durability. While there has been a wee bit of retconning over the years considering what metal is actually the strongest, it's generally agreed upon that adamantium is the strongest, although Uru is in another precious class in itself. One thing we do know for sure is that Colossus's body has been shown to be stronger than everything but vibranium and adamantium. While those two can damage Colossus, a great amount of strength is required to actually cut through his body, meaning characters like Wolverine would have a tough time with his claws damaging the hero, although once upon a time the Demon Sim used Logan's dismembered claws to puncture through Peter's body. It's a whole other thing though. And as seen in the crossover X-Men Spider-Man issue 4, he is also vulnerable to the anti-metal Antarctic vibranium. His body will actually shift to human form instinctively when he is faced with a weapon made from that material. Up next, number 8, he is bendable. While he may be immensely durable, did you know that Colossus's organic steel form could be permanently bent? Well, sort of. So, during World War Hulk, Colossus went face to face with Hulk and the big green monster bent his arm backwards. Here's where things get a little frustrating for him. When he is in his metal form, as long as his injuries or breaks are fixed, he doesn't risk being hurt in his human form. So Colossus ended up hitting up Beast, who then used a super hot laser to heat up his metal body and slowly bent it back into place. This has also happened on other occasions using different methods. For example, Magneto has used his magnetism powers to return Colossus's bits back to where they're supposed to be in the past. And at number 7, Neck snapping. Okay, alright, not a power, more so a line that he's willing to pass. But considering he's a superhero, and an X-Men nonetheless, taking names and snapping necks is a pretty big jump from superhero heroics. That's murder, you guys. This went down in 1986 during the infamous Mutant Massacre, in which the Marauders, under Mr. Sinister's command, attempted to slaughter all of the Morlocks. The X-Men got involved, and Colossus came face to face with one of the Marauders, Riptide, who can spin his body into a tornado and eject razor-sharp spines from his flesh. Now those didn't have much of an effect on Peter though, who went after Riptide after he had attacked Nightcrawler. He snapped his neck in the process. Now for a guy who's usually depicted as quite virtuous, he has an interesting history when it comes to morals. Despite being a generally good dude, he has done some morally questionable stuff over the years aside from homicide, including hooking up with Kitty Pryde when she was just a teenager. She was roughly 13 when he was 19. Yeah, the relationship was cut short thanks to Jim Shooter, and later was revitalized years later when they were both age appropriate. In at number 6, his Ultimate Universe powers. Colossus on Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, has a slightly different skill set than that of Peter of Earth 616. In the somewhat controversial Ultimate X-Men series, many of our beloved mutants were altered in ways that weren't so great. Colossus, in this case, was an addict, but his addiction was tied to his abilities. Essentially, this alternate version of Colossus was unable to move his body when he transformed into his organic metal form. He was basically a big ol' statue. So in order to move around, he took a mutant enhancement called Banshee, which was a highly addictive drug, and Colossus would need to be constantly doping up on Banshee in order to keep up with the rest of the X-Men team. And at number 5, slowed aging. This is actually a byproduct of a previous number on our list, the fact that Colossus is self-sustaining. Now there have been periods in the comics where Colossus has been able to return to his human form, while in the state his human form remained unchanged. His teammates theorized that in his organic metal form, Colossus is fresh of cellular degradation, meaning he doesn't age. And at number 4, immunity. While anyone could take a shot in the dark and assume that with a bod like his, Colossus is pretty durable and therefore immune to a lot of attacks, the exact extent of that immunity is pretty mind-blowing. His organic metal body is impervious to oxidization, therefore he never rusts. This also extends to immunity from biotoxins and biohazards. While he does need to sanitize himself before returning to his human form when exposed to these kinds of hazards in order to kill any lingering microbes, that's still really impressive. Plus he's resistant to magic attacks and electricity. Damn. Moving on to number 3, liquefied metal. During the Omega World storyline, Colossus became a Horseman of Apocalypse, specifically the Horseman of War. This went down in Extraordinary X-Men when he and his team traveled to a place called Omega World and came across the powerful big bad Apocalypse. Colossus, being the virtuous dude he usually is, sacrificed himself to save his team, and Apocalypse turned him into one of his horsemen. The power upgrade gave him a new ability alongside boosting the ones he already possessed. He could turn his body into liquefied metal, kinda like the Terminator in Terminator 2, not the Arnie one. He could use this form to extend his limbs and attack foes dozens of feet away. Up next at 2, the Phoenix Force. Peter was once part of the Phoenix Five and was endowed with the Phoenix Force alongside Emma Frost, his sister Magic, Namor, and of course, Cyclops, who led the team of sorts. This went down in Avengers vs. X-Men when Cyclops led the characters to the moon in pursuit of Wolverine and Hope Summers, and the Phoenix Force appeared. Iron Man had been building a weapon to fight the Phoenix Force, so when it was attacked, in order to survive, it made all 5 of those characters its avatar, in which the characters split the power amongst themselves, but were still immensely strong. With this power upgrade, Colossus could use cosmic flames, projecting them and manipulating them at will. Initially he wanted to do good with the Phoenix Force, and he and his fellow avatars had decided to use it to make the world a better place, by providing free energy, pure water, and food across the globe. It's also worth mentioning that at the time he still had the powers that we're about to discuss in our next and final number. In at number 1, he had Juggernaut's powers. Okay, so you know how Juggernaut Kane Marco gets his powers thanks to being the mystical entity Sidorak's avatar? Well, once upon a time, prior to Avengers vs. X-Men, during the Fear Itself storyline, Sidorak made Colossus his new avatar. Context time. In order to prevent his sister Magic from becoming Sidorak's new avatar, Colossus sacrificed himself, a thing that he tends to do a lot, it's a trend, taking her place instead. Colossus essentially became the new Juggernaut, taking all of his powers and even wore a similar costume to his. Unfortunately, these powers came with some additional hangups. Sidorak had a parasitic effect on the mutant, giving him claws and spikes over time. A demon form that Sidorak admitted he gave Peter because he was one of his favorite hosts. Weird gift. The demon's presence also altered his personality, filling his mind with destructive thoughts, hence why during Avengers vs. X-Men, Colossus' sister broke him free of Sidorak's grasp.
Coming in at number 10, talking to fish. Look, almost everyone knows Aquaman as the guy who can talk to fish. It's the most common thing brought up when talking about the hero. But that That statement is both a huge misunderstanding and only one small part of a much more interesting ability. Aquaman is not like the deep from The Boys. As far as we know, fish and marine life are not at the level of intelligence that allows them to hold conversations. They can't tell you how their day is going or try and maintain relationships with us, and honestly, why would they want to? We kinda suck. Aquaman is not actually talking to fish. Instead, Aquaman uses telepathy. He can hear the voice of the sea and communicate with its many denizens living within it, along with those who spring from it through empathic communication. While he is more than capable of using this ability to force marine beings to do what he wants, Aquaman prefers to telepathically suggest aquatic life towards his goal or out of harm's way in order to maintain their respect. This is something he has been able to do since he was a child, but it doesn't just pertain to aquatic life. Although he can't force humans or other creatures to do his bidding in the same way he can with the denizens of the sea, through his telepathy he is more than capable of weakening, probing, dominating, and attacking non-aquatic minds as well. And he's even used these abilities to boost up the power of his own teammates. Number 9. Accessing the clear. Prior to the New 52 reboot, Aquaman possessed the ability to tap directly into a force known as the Clear. This primordial force is what binds all life in the sea and provides ocean-themed heroes with their superpowers. Thanks to his harnessing of the Clear, Aquaman's awesome natural telepathy that we just talked about was augmented to a larger degree, allowing him to communicate with and summon sea creatures from the other side of the planet and send out telepathic broadcasts across the ocean. It even allowed him to form a universal consciousness with all life in the sea, enabling him to send his mind out to see through the eyes of sea life. Something interesting about this force is that, well, technically, all life at some point originated from the ocean. So, Aquaman can also push his telepathic powers to reach out to the higher land creatures to find that element of their brains that was once an aquatic dwelling creature and manipulate it. Now, post New 52, this connection to the Clear has been altered slightly and is now known as a connection with the Life Force. The Life Force is one of the 7 forces of the universe, and for Aquaman, his connection to the Life Force is focused on marine life, and not just the marine life of Earth either. Through the Life Force, Arthur is connected to all living beings, which has enabled him to establish a supernatural link to any and all sentient entities throughout the entire cosmos. He can use this connection to determine a being's origin, as he was able to do when he determined that the Void Song came from an ocean planet after being in close contact with it. With the Life Force, a lot of his abilities are similar to the connection to the Clear, with a whole bunch more still unknown even to Aquaman, which leaves some pretty exciting potential for his character and what powers he could possess in the future. Number 8. Night Vision. Now, I don't know if you know, but the sea is deep, and a large majority of it is so far away from the surface that it's pretty much in a constant state of almost complete darkness. And even if it isn't, if it's nighttime or if we're looking through murky water, forget about it. You ain't seeing anything down there. It's estimated that the average human can see between 165 and 230 feet deep in moderately clear water. Well, for Aquaman, an Atlantean human hybrid, he once said that he could see clearly in depths as far down as 6,000 fathoms, aka 36,000 feet. That is insane. That includes seeing through the murkiest of waters. So, now, take that incredible supervision and put it on land where it's not inhibited by water, and Aquaman has incredible supervision, allowing him to see clearly in the dark and see things that other League members could never even hope to pick up on. Number 7. Summoning undead sea life. Some of our heroes' powers really only come to light or become useful in very specific situations, and some literally only appear in key events, never to be seen again. Now, an example of that kind of power for Aquaman came during the Brightest Day crossover event, which followed the awesome Blackest Night. In Blackest Night, Aquaman was one of a bunch of heroes and villains that were resurrected from the underworld to become members of the Black Lantern Corps. After their defeat, the remaining heroes and villains who returned to the land of the living had to now find find their purpose. Aquaman was returned with the purpose of both saving Aqualad and preventing a war between Atlantis and Zabel. Arthur found that since he was resurrected to serve as a member of the Black Lantern Corps, he was now able to summon undead sea life to come to his aid. And trust me when I say that it is much cooler than you might think. Unfortunately though, it didn't really stick around for a long time. Number 6. Magic. Now before you get all up in arms, no, Aquaman is not any kind of otherworldly powerful magic wielder. He's no Zatanna, Constantine, or Dr. Fate, but still, a lesser known inclusion to his surprisingly long list of abilities is that Aquaman has the underlying potential to cast and manipulate the forces of magic. Now it's worth noting that normally he needs an item of power to channel this power through, like, oh I don't know, a trident for example. But on a few occasions he's been able to use magic without his trident or any kind of channeling object for that matter. This magical ability is bestowed on him simply by being a member of Atlantean royalty, but also by being blessed by both Poseidon and the Lady of the Lake, the overseer of the metaphysical realm known as the Secret Sea. He has shown the magical capability to shoot lightning from his trident, manipulate the weather, create jets of water out of his hands, and he has even been able to dehydrate some enemies to the point of sending them to the afterlife, which is an absolutely terrifying way to go. But thanks to his magical affinity, Arthur Curry is also resistant and resilient to the forces of magic too, which is something he actually has over Superman. So take that, you haters. Number 5. Healing. In the comics, there was a time when Aquaman lost his left hand, and funnily enough, this actually managed to make him even cooler and or stronger in a few different ways. To make up for his lost appendage, he got himself a wide variety of alternate hands, each with different benefits. He has had a cybernetic hand with a retractable hook, as well as a hand made out of liquid metal. But I think his most notable hand was a special one made out of water, courtesy of the Lady of the Lake, called the Water Bearer's Hand. This hand was what allowed Aquaman to create freezing or scalding jets of water from his hands and dehydrate fools, but it has even more nifty benefits beyond that. Thanks to his magical water hand, Aquaman has received the ability to completely heal others with its magical properties. But then, there's also that nifty life force connection. This has allowed Aquaman to even restore fallen gods into their divine forms and retrieve the essences of dead gods, meaning Aquaman has not only resurrection abilities, but also resurrection that extends to godly entities themselves. Number 4. Portals. Let's jump back to that magic hand here for a second. The Water Bearer hand bestowed on Aquaman numerous magical abilities. Now we've talked about a bunch, but the hand seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. Another attribute it granted to Aquaman was the ability to open interdimensional portals. Obviously, as we've proven so far, Aquaman is no slouch, but he isn't really that helpful when it comes to extraterrestrial threats that require him to venture out of this world. For that, he would traditionally need the help of his other League members, but with the Water Bearer hand's magic, that was no longer the case. Now he could travel great distances across the world in an instant and even out into the wider universe or even other dimensions. Needless to say, the Lady of the Lake really lent Aquaman a hand with this gift. Pun intended. Number 3. Flight. This power has actually been a hotly contested point among fans of Aquaman for a long time. A lot of people believe that Aquaman cannot fly, and they are actually partially right. Honestly, there isn't really a need for him to fly. Being an aquatic character, it seems almost pointless, and there is also the question of how he would even be able to break gravity like that. Although you could ask that of any flying character, honestly. I think the confusion really comes from the fact that Aquaman does often perform super jumping to get around. I'm talking he jumps miles in single bounds, similar to the Hulk. That is easy to mistake for actual flying, and for a long time that was the extent of his airborne abilities. But luckily for Aquaman, he has a pretty good relationship with the god of the sea, Poseidon, and thanks to that Olympian's blessing, Aquaman gained the actual ability to fly in the Prime Earth post-Flashpoint DC universe. Unsurprisingly though, he still doesn't really use it that much. Number 2. Water Wraith. JLA The Obsidian Age was a story from 2003 which, among other things, involved Aquaman and Atlantis being sent 3,000 years back in time, where they were ultimately put under the thumb of the League of Ancients. As we would almost all expect, the Justice League discovered the disappearance and they go to the rescue, traveling back in time to save their comrade and his people. When they arrive, 5, they learned that the sorceress Gamamemini, whose name I likely savagely butchered just now, had trapped Aquaman's consciousness in a pool of water. Now, after freeing the rest of the Atlanteans, the Justice League launched their final assault on this sorceress to no avail as she reappeared in the future. Now, in the future, or I guess the present, she attempted to take control of the world by causing a global drought. Now, in order to stop her, Zatanna channeled Aquaman's consciousness into the oceans. This means Aquaman, with this upgrade, literally became a living body of water, and he used this awesome water wraith power to defeat Gamamemini once and for all. But this isn't the only time he's taken on a form composed entirely of H2O. And finally, in at number 1, super strength. Super strength is one of those things that most superheroes are just kind of expected to have. But not all super strength is equal, and characters have varying degrees of it. I think a lot of people who are familiar with the character of Aquaman but aren't his close fans may underestimate his strength. Again, we know Aquaman is often the butt of a lot of jokes related to his usefulness, but this guy is no slouch, not by a long shot. Aquaman is strong. He is more than strong enough to send Superman and Wonder Woman several dozen feet away with singular blows, which is nothing to scoff at. He has been capable of lifting a 160,000 ton sea liner barehanded and lifting and throwing a sunken cargo ship. But even more impressive than that is when he literally pushed an entire tectonic plate over the entrance to the trench's lair while underwater. Aquaman's strength is something that is often overlooked, kind of like how the character himself is overlooked much too often. Coming in at number 10, he's immune to continuity changes. Barry Allen can run faster than the speed of light, and yet what is arguably his most impressive accomplishment is becoming completely immune to the DC Universe's many continuity changes. As an example of what I mean, in the Flashpoint story, Barry is the only one who remembered the previous version of the DC Universe while in the wildly different timeline that he found himself in. It's not just Barry though. When Wally West, the fastest Flash, re-emerged from the Speed Force in the DC Rebirth era, he was the only one who remembered the pre-New 52 world that the rest of the DCU forgot about. The Speed Force has always enabled the Flashes to do amazing things, and one of the major things it has done is allowed speedsters to step completely outside of time. The ability to be unaffected by continuity changes is an added benefit of that. It makes the Flash and the speedsters the only living authorities within the DCU who know what their universe is supposed to look like. Number 9. Telepathic immunity. When someone moves their body at a speed so fast that they begin to live in the moments between moments, their minds would also have to move at such astronomical speeds. And the Flash's mind definitely does indeed move that fast. Thank the Lord the Speed Force doesn't just push the physical. Barry Allen's brain's computational enhancements do a lot for him, and I'll be talking about a good number of those things later on. But one thing that having a mind that moves just so insanely fast is that speedsters are all heavily resistant to mind control and mental attacks. If you think about this, it just kinda makes sense. If someone uses their telepathic brain at the normal human speed, any move they try to make against someone like Barry Allen or Wally West would be done at a snail's pace in comparison to their brains that are essentially moving thousands of times faster and seeing things many moves ahead. Coming in at number 8, it's the speed aura. One of the main reasons that a speedster like Barry Allen or Wally West can't exist in the real world is, well, because if anyone moved that fast in real life, it would actually destroy the Earth, but also because there's a thing called friction. When we move fast enough, friction can occur from even just the air. If you are moving as fast as a speedster and you have no speed force or some kind of durability enhancement, then by the time you get where you're going, you probably wouldn't have much in the way of skin or muscles anymore. And that goes double for anyone you may be carrying / trying to save. Well, thanks to the Speed Force, speedsters actually gain an aura that basically negates that whole issue. The aura, which grows the faster Flash is moving, allows in enough air and wind to keep him cool, but it blocks all debris and air friction that could hurt the speedster or anyone he's carrying. He's essentially surrounded by a quote friction cushion of kinetic absorbent energy that protects from the rigorous effects of using such insane speeds. Outside of friction, this also protects from airborne particulate matter, heavy impacts, and even G-force. Number 7. Microsleeps. Remember how I said the Flash basically thinks as fast as he runs? Well, what if I told you he also sleeps as fast as he runs? More than that, what if I told you that he sleeps in the little in-between moments that he is fighting bad guys? Now, of course, when the Flash is facing off against Reverse Flash, other speedsters, the Legion of Doom, or any major threat, the Flash is all hands on deck, red alert, focused. But when he's out there doing the daily superhero grind and battling it out with some random petty criminals, Flash can take it easy and relax a little bit more than other people can, and that is when he has his micro naps. Taking place in the literal picoseconds, which is 1/1,000,000th of a second, the Flash can and does take cat naps that help keep him focused during a fight and well rested at all times. That explains why we never really see them sleeping at all. Number 6. Electromagnetism. One of the more curious aspects of Barry Allen's Speed Force abilities is that it gives him some degree of electrokinesis. He can generate lightning and electrical attacks and discharges, and is actually quite the potent ability, with his lightning being able to travel through water and disrupt magic. But due to his electrical abilities, Barry is also able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum to some extent. And the biggest example of this is him getting his entire supersuit into his ring. The heat from Barry's lightning creates a thermal expansion that allows Barry's suit to be stored in his ring. Every time he releases his suit from his ring, the pieces of it are conducted by lightning to form the suit around him. He manipulates electromagnetism to mentally control the pieces that form, specifically though, his mask, and can cause the mask to construct over his face and even retract back on his command. So while that is a small example of electromagnetism, knowing that Barry can use his lightning to create electromagnetic fields means that it really only takes one story for the Flash to become a scary fast Magneto. Number 5. Speed Force clothing. So we just talked about how Barry uses electromagnetism to assemble his suit from his ring. Still defies so many things, but his counterpart, Wally West, sometimes he doesn't even have access to his suit for various different reasons. This isn't a problem though, as Wally West Flash can also make his costume directly out of the Speed Force. Now this ability does take some concentration and comes with the risk of the Flash ending up completely naked if he happens to get knocked out or something, but thinking about it, this means that speedsters can basically have the ability to make Speed Force constructs. But beyond just creating a temporary Flash costume, which looked awesome by the way, Wally has used this ability to reweave the molecules of his Kid Flash costume and construct a completely new Flash suit out of pure Speed Force energy. What does that even mean? I don't know. Do you know? Probably not. Number 4. Speed Bank. One very useful trick that both Wally West and Barry Allen have been shown to have is the ability to lend out and take away the Speed Force abilities from others. Basically, these two can act as something of a quote speed bank. That's what someone online called it at least. These two Flashes are so well connected to the Speed Force that they can give or take speed away from others. As with any ability that is much too overpowered, like Speed Force constructs for example, it uses a fair amount of quote concentration, leaving the Flash open to other attacks. But if they want to, the Flash can make anyone a temporary speedster to help in a fight, or he can take away the speed from people or objects, stopping them in their tracks. Or, if you go by the name Impulse, Wally West can freeze you in one pose and leave you in a museum alive but petrified for all times. Sounds scary when you say it like that, doesn't it? Number 3. Speed Reading. Like I said before, those with the Speed Force move their minds, and I guess their eyes, about as fast as their bodies. As a byproduct of that, speedsters can also read entire books front to back in a matter of moments. This can be extremely helpful for superheroes in tight spots where they need information on a certain topic or need to read an instruction manual to help them out in specific situations. For both Barry Allen and Wally West though, they are actually unable to retain the knowledge of what they read at super speed. They read it and then it will stay in their minds for a little while, but after about a day or so, it will be gone. But those two aren't the only speedsters around. Both Bart Allen and the original Flash, Jay Garrick, have both completely mastered this ability. These two speedsters can retain everything they read, and Jay has even bragged that he has read every single science book in the world and can recite them word for word. I kinda believe it, big old nerd. Number 2, speed cloning. This one is something that has been seen before with other fast-moving superheroes. In most iterations of an ability like speed cloning, a character is simply moving so fast that they appear to be in more than one place at the same time. With the Flash though, it's just a tiny bit different. They do move so fast that they appear to be in two places at once, but that's because that's actually another them. The Flash is able to create duplicates of himself by very quickly entering and exiting the time stream, essentially creating versions of himself that are 1 second older or younger than the main one. These clones aren't actually clones, as in they aren't genetically grown beings identical to the host, but rather they are actual moments of the Flash that are just cut out from time and pasted into another moment. When he was Impulse, Bart Allen was the first one to ever do this, and it went really bad, as the hero then watched a time-displaced version of himself completely lose his life, which has to be absolutely terrifying to watch. And finally, in number 1, it's a super metabolism. This one does feel like a bit of a no-brainer, but I find that a speedster's metabolism doesn't actually come up very often, not in stories or anything really. Basically, every speedster has a faster metabolism than an average human, and that just makes sense, but it affects each of them differently. They all heal at a faster rate than normal people, but Barry Allen himself has shown the ability to just focus on an injury and heal it almost instantly. When his arm was completely crushed, it only took minutes for his arm to be completely healed. He was also able to quickly heal from the absolutely insane pressures of being 2,000 feet below the ocean, which dealt extreme damage to his body, and he was fine. Wally West at one point had a weaker connection to the Speed Force, and at that time, Wally would have to eat massive amounts of food just in order to keep his metabolism up and running, which to me sounds like an absolute nightmare. I love food, but could you imagine having to just chow down on a mountain of food, especially if it wasn't good food? Luckily, once he was able to fully connect to the Speed Force, that went away, but it's an interesting thing to note that in order to keep themselves up and running without the Speed Force, speedsters have to be super eaters. The super metabolism also unfortunately means that parties are celebrated sober only, but the Flash is virtually immune to any gases, so like, you win some, you lose some, you know what I mean?
In its end shape-shifting face, Superman possesses an incredible level of control over all of his muscles, which at one point allowed him to alter the shape of his face and even transform his entire body. The remarkable ability is showcased in Action Comics number 55 and several other Golden Age stories, but in his early adventures, Superman used this power to assume various disguises, such as mimicking disgraced athletes or adopting the appearance of extraterrestrial creatures. Given the extent of the shape-shifting ability though, it raises the question, why would he choose to conceal his identity with glasses when he's able to transform his entire being? But the answer to that question is complicated. While Superman's shape-shifting ability grants him remarkable disguise potential, he primarily relies on Clark Kent to protect the identity. But the real reason behind how this is so effective will be explained in a minute. And at 9, explosion containment. In the Flashpoint paradox, Superman joins forces with the Flash and other heroes to rescue him from Professor Zoom and Rogues. As Zoom threatens to destroy Central City with powerful bombs attached to Flash and the other rogues, the heroes come up with a plan. They split up, each taking a rogue and moving to defuse the bombs at a safe distance. Superman takes on Heatwave and positions him at a cliff. With his superhuman strength, Superman just like grabs the bomb and covers it with his bare hands, and then contains the explosion. The rest of Team Flash defuses the bomb successfully and saves Flash, but Superman's just like, I got this, don't worry, boom! It's impressive, but I mean like, yeah, it would make sense, but also the fact that like you had to hold your hands together hella hard for that to not leak out the sides, that's impressive. That's a power in and of itself. In at 8, Master Builder. This is where it starts getting weird. In the 1987 film Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, there is a scene where Nuclear Man damages the Great Wall of China. Upon witnessing the destruction, Superman merely gazes at the debris, and within moments, the wall is miraculously restored. This power is often overlooked, but yeah, Superman is able to repair their objects or structures just by looking at them, like a master builder from the Lego movie. The reason why this is actually a thing is not really understood. It's very, very specific, so it's literally never mentioned again. Because, I mean, also, like, the Great Wall of China is not really part of Superman's daily patrol. While he protects the world from imminent threats, he can also cut the Union workers' time in half. So there you go. Maybe that's something to look out for, government. The unique power of just rebuilding objects through looking at them is just so dumb. But again, it would have been useful in the Lego Batman movie. Bruce could have used your help there, Soups. Also, it just clicked that the Lego movie is canon in the Spider-Verse now, which means that we have yet another link between Marvel and DC. In at 7, Mind Control. In a daring series of events, in Superman number 45 from 1947, the alien race known as the Collectors unleashes their power of invisibility to disrupt a boxing match and abduct Biff the Unbeatable. Their audacity continues as they capture atomic scientist John Henders during a crucial presentation, followed by the abduction of a beauty contest participant and judge, Lois Lane, and then finally, millionaire Herkimer Ingot falls victim to their grasp within the confines of his own damn home. Superman ends up getting captured or lets himself get captured because during his imprisonment, he uses his telepathic abilities to coerce his captors into revealing the device that grants them interdimensional travel. He then uses this to break free from his cell, turns himself into a collector. So with the aid of that dimension hopping device, Superman transports himself to the third dimension. He then also destroys the machine, ensuring the collector's abduction thing comes to an end. In at 6, self-cloning. In the pages of 1958 Superman number 125, an unusual encounter with an alien ship leads to the loss of Superman's usual powers. Instead, he discovers two peculiar abilities: the power to emit rainbow beams from his fingertips and the ability to create a miniature version of himself from the palm of his hand. While the rainbow beams had their limitations, Superman relied heavily on his little clones to perform tasks requiring his usual strength. It comes as no surprise that Superman does eventually get his powers back. Superman found little reason after that to really use the rainbow beams and his mini-me. It's reasonable to assume that he could also keep these powers. Why would you rely on those when you can use frickin' heat vision? The fact that they only really showed up once does like limit their use, their functionality, and the fact that no one frickin' remembers it. Halfway through into number 5, Amnesia Kisses. This also explains quite a lot. In the 1980 film Superman 2, an intriguing aspect of Superman's powers is revealed. Through his kisses, apparently he has the ability to selectively erase memories from another person's mind. In a memorable scene, Clark Kent, portrayed by Christopher Reeves, uses this power to make Lois Lane forget the events of the entire movie. The connection between kissing and memory manipulation is left unexplained. The film doesn't really delve into the mechanics of the ability because it only uses it once and then no one ever mentions it again, but I'd be convinced that it just kind of helps his mind control thing, because when you're kissing someone, you're in quite a vulnerable place. Nevertheless, the outcome is questionable, and Superman's kisses have the power to alter and remove memories apparently, but it serves a narrative purpose It's used to resolve certain story elements, but like, I don't know. It keeps Clark's identity secret from Lois, but like, what the hell? In at 4, Super Dance. Superman's abilities also extend beyond super strength. He has demonstrated finesse and grace on the dance floor when the situation demands it. In a display of his versatile skills, he utilized his strength and smooth moves to create vibrations, effectively disarming a set of concealed bombs. Remarkably, he accomplished this feat without attracting attention or compromising his secret identity, which is why he was doing the dance, because he didn't want to reveal that he was Superman, but still, it's an unexpected combination of power and dancing that actually kind of showcases Superman's adaptability and resourcefulness. Like, he was harnessing his strength and translating it into dance moves, and used that to generate the necessary vibrations to neutralize hidden bombs. Like, it allows him to maintain his cover, and he handled the dangerous situation discreetly. But God, that's... Getting close to the end, into number 3, Symbol Toss. Superman 2, yet again one of the standout Superman films, does introduce some peculiar scenes. Like I said before, you know, the whole kissing thing. But in this movie, General Zod and his cohorts, Non and Ursa, attempt to conquer the world, leading to an intense battle in Fortress of Solitude. During the confrontation though, Superman surprises everyone by tearing the emblem off his suit and hurling it at Non, naring the Kryptonian in like a cellophane trap. The fact fact that you're able to use the symbol in such a manner is just one of the most surreal and possibly even debated moments in Superman lore, especially because he throws it, but like in that scene the symbol is still on his chest. The mechanics of it remain ambiguous, and that's probably for the best, but I don't know. It looks like it's made out of plastic, but also it's freaking cling film, and then it gains strength enough to detain Non, and then it just vanishes when he's done with it. I don't know where they were going with that one, but hey, if it works, it works. But ultimately, in at number 2, magic glasses. In a peculiar turn of events depicted in 1978's Superman number 330, it's revealed that Superman's Kryptonian biology, when combined with the glass of his eyeglasses, possesses the uncanny ability to hypnotize individuals, making them perceive Clark Kent as an entirely different person, distinct from the Man of Steel. That's why he doesn't need to change his whole face. This unique power could also be referred to as like secret identity vision. However, as this storyline involving the magic glasses and their hypnotic effects didn't really gain much traction because, I mean, the explanation was kind of unnecessary and didn't really make sense. It quickly faded into obscurity because of that, being rarely mentioned or revisited. And then to further distance it, the Crisis on Infinite Earths Absolute Edition provided a comprehensive overview of the multiverse, explicitly designating this story as taking place on an alternate Earth. But it was still a thing. It was still a thing in the main canon for a while, and explains why he didn't need to change his face. And finally, in at number 1, caller ID. Superman once possessed an ability that can only be described as both a secret and utterly useless. Through use of his telepathic powers, the Man of Steel showcased the capacity to identify callers on the other end of a telephone line. In today's world where caller ID is a standard feature, this power is completely obsolete. It's like akin a slingshot to kill Darkseid. It held some relevance during that time because technology was less advanced. There was no caller ID, and telepathic feats actually seemed like it made sense, but as the world progressed and communication tech evolved, didn't really need it anymore. There you go, guys. If you want to know more about weird powers from your favorite superheroes, be sure to click the video that's popping up on screen because these can get hella weird. Thanks for watching.